From Earth to the Moon, the Neil Armstrong story read and published by Mr. Books. The story of Neil Armstrong is not just the tale of a man who set foot on another world. It is the chronicle of human audacity, the culmination of centuries of longing, innovation, and sacrifice. In every era, some gaze up at the night and see more than lights, who imagine stories, possibilities, destinies that beckon from the black canvas above. Armstrong was both a dreamer and a doer, bearing the hopes of millions on his cautious but resolute shoulders. Armstrong's journey from a small Midwestern town to the Sea of Tranquility is woven into the very fabric of modern history. He emerged from the humility of Wapakoneta, Ohio, shaped by the winds of war, the marvel of flight, and the relentless drive to push boundaries. Yet he remained always grounded, a man who spoke softly and rarely courted the limelight, whose greatest moments were lived not for glory, but for the simple satisfaction of achieving the impossible. This odyssey is one of heart, as much as hardware. It is about the breathtaking fever of early aviators, the brotherhood of test pilots facing death in desert skies, the sleepless nights of engineers, and the quiet strength of families left behind. It tells of humanity's tallest risk, of standing atop a rocket's fire, knowing that failure meant never coming home. It's about the fragile footprints in alien dust that ensured for one brief moment humanity was united in wonder and awe. Armstrong's legacy is not only marked by that historic line. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, but by his careful commitment to purpose, community, and humility. This book seeks to explore Armstrong's life from boyhood fascination to his enduring impact on science, inspiration, and the pursuit of all that lies beyond our reach. In celebrating the man who first touched the lunar surface, we also rediscover the meaning of hope, courage, and the inexhaustible human spirit. Step by step, from Earth to the Moon, let us walk with Neil, feel the gravity of his choices, and marvel at the boundless horizon he helped us all to see. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button to support the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an audiobook that could change your life. Now let's begin. Enjoy. Chapter 1. A boy with stars in his eyes, Neil was born on August 5, 1930, in the small, unassuming town of Wapakoneta, Ohio. To the casual observer, it was a place like any other, a patchwork of cornfields and cautious optimism. But to a boy with stars in his eyes, Wapakoneta was a launching pad, an anchor point before the great unknown. Neil's world was small in size, but boundless in potential, his dreams immeasurable against the sky that stretched over the flat, patchy land. From the earliest age, Neil Armstrong cultivated a fascination with flight that bordered on obsession. His father, Stephen, often took him to county fairs where barnstorming pilots looped and spun impossibly above. Neil's wide-eyed wonder was deeper than thrills. It was hunger. Airplanes soared not just across the air, but through his imagination. Vehicles to a future he could only sense, intangible yet inexorable. At night, he would lie beneath the stars, tracing constellations and imagining himself tracing arcs across the cosmos. His mother, Viola, nurtured his curiosity. Patient and gentle, she would watch as Neil built model airplanes with meticulous care, each balsa strip carefully measured, each wing patiently glued. Viola encouraged inquiry, never dissuading her son's fantastical questions or the endless hours he spent nose-deep in library books. While other children bounded through Wapakoneta's muddy streets, Neil constructed skyward dreams, his bright mind already reaching past Earth's confines. School was a realm where Neil's quiet intellect thrived. Reserved but earnest, he was not the most outgoing child, But his teachers recognized a clarity of thought, a steadiness of purpose rare for any age. He excelled particularly in mathematics and science, two disciplines that became secret passageways to the stars. Yet it was his hands-on experiments, paper planes, wind tunnels built from cardboard boxes, kite-building competitions, that truly set his heart racing. Every small success in the backyard or schoolyard felt like a rehearsal for something far greater. The defining moment, the pivot on which his boyhood turned, came at the age of 6. A 10-minute flight in a Ford Trimotor changed everything. The earth shrank beneath him, the horizon dipped and bobbed, and Neil was awash with exhilaration. It was a transcendent sense of freedom, a literal and emotional lift that clarified his calling. From that day on, flight became not just a curiosity, but a destiny. But destiny is never achieved in isolation. Neil's relationship with his family, the rhythm of small-town life, and the era's broader cultural current of exploration all helped shape his journey. The 1930s and 1940s were uncertain times, colored by war and hardship, but also by hope and renewal. For young Neil, every obstacle, economic struggle, family moves, the passing shadow of war, only reinforced the need to rise above. In the evenings, as the sun set over fields of corn, Neil would retreat to his bedroom window. Above, the moon would cast its steady glow over Wapakoneta. To most, it was a distant, unchanging face. To Neil Armstrong, it was a challenge, a promise that someday he would find a way not just to see it, but to touch it. The dream was born. In those moments of quiet yearning, the first small step on a very long journey. Chapter 2. Wings of ambition. Neil's adolescence was marked by a restless, palpable ambition to break free of earthbound limitations. As soon as he was old enough, he pursued his pilot's license before he even had his driver's license, a rare and enviable feat in post-war America. His allowance, summer odd jobs, and relentless chores all went not toward amusement, but toward those precious, fleeting moments in the air. The local flying field became his sanctuary, the soundtrack of his teenage years laced with the hum of engines and the chatter of seasoned pilots who soon respected the boy with the unwavering gaze. Aviation was neither a hobby nor an escape for Neil. It was as fundamental as breath. He would recount later that, aloft, he never felt fear. Only a resounding clarity, a sense of belonging found nowhere else. Solo flights over vast, checkered farmlands gave him a new vantage, the kind that compresses life's worries into manageable fragments seen from 1,000 feet up. These formative flights stitched together his technical curiosity with a longing for unbounded possibility. Neil's hunger for knowledge propelled him toward Purdue University, a beacon for budding engineers and pilots. The campus pulsed with post-war optimism, youthful intellects galvanized by the promise of scientific progress. But the interpersonal and emotional challenges of college life were as formidable as any equation. Neil, shy and introspective, sometimes struggled to connect, but found companionship with fellow enthusiasts in classrooms and hangars alike. His studies at Purdue were interrupted by the outbreak of the Korean War, a moment that tested his principles and determination. Enlisting in the Navy as a midshipman, Neil was pulled abruptly from theory into practice, his mind and body thrust into the crucible of conflict. As a carrier-based pilot aboard the USS Essex, he participated in 78 combat missions, each fraught with mortal risk and split-second judgment. The psychological toll was immense. Pilots lived on borrowed time, measuring existence by seconds and luck. Neil faced direct fire, nearly lost his life when his plane's wing was torn off by anti-aircraft. Fire and crash landed, yet he never succumbed to panic. His colleagues remarked on his almost eerie calm in crisis, his ability to manage fear incrementally, compartmentalizing terror until a safe landing could be made, or not. Through trauma, he developed the stoicism and technical acumen that would later define the best astronauts. Returning to Purdue, Neil approached his education with layered gravitas. The war had changed him. He was introspective, aware of the ephemeral nature of time, focused with a preternatural clarity. He delved deeper into aeronautical engineering, blending his combat experience with sophisticated academic theories. Professors noted his analytical rigor. Peers respected his humility and quiet leadership. Neil's personal life, meanwhile, began to blossom. He met Janet Sharon, a musician with a gentle soul and a keen perception of inner landscapes. Their courtship brought Neil a sense of balance, anchoring him even as his ambitions threatened to whisk him skyward. Janet, with her patience and understanding, would become both partner and confidant. Their union would become a testament to love's endurance against the gravity of public duty. By the time Neil graduated, the sky was no longer the limit. He was ready for whatever new heights beckoned, a test pilot's world of supersonic dreams, and ultimately, the beckoning hand of destiny itself. Chapter 3. A New Frontier. Testing limits. When Neil Armstrong joined the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, the precursor to NASA, he entered a world of unimaginable exhilaration and omnipresent risk. The Edwards Air Force Base in California's Mojave Desert was the proving ground of American aviation, an unforgiving landscape where the future of flight took shape in the sonic crackle of rocket planes and the tense camaraderie of the test pilots' ranks. Here, Neil came face to face with the edge of possibility. Every test flight was an experiment not only in physics, but in courage and survival. The desert airstrip bustled with characters who would become legends. Chuck Yeager, Scott Crossfield, and others who greeted each sunrise with a gambler's grin, their lives mortgaged on the next attempt to puncture Mach's invisible barriers. Neil fit in as an outsider, more bookish than brash, yet quickly earned respect for his methodical nature and unflappable calm. His flights were characterized less by daredevil spectacle and more by exacting discipline. Where some test pilots relished drama, Neil craved data, seeing every near catastrophe as an equation to be solved. The X-15 became his machine of choice, a slender black dart that could climb to the edge of space, then plummet back at hypersonic speeds. Encased in flame and vibration at 5 times the speed of sound, Neil piloted the X-15 into the stratosphere, experiencing minutes of microgravity, glimpsing the arch of Earth's horizon. Out there, he would later say, you witness the thinness of life itself. Each mission meant pushing technology and human endurance to their outer boundaries. Split-second decisions in uncharted flight domains made Armstrong the ideal candidate for an even greater challenge. Disaster was always close. On more than one occasion, Neil's X-15 suffered malfunctions. Once it bounced off the atmosphere, sending him hundreds of miles off course. The difference between legend and catastrophe was often a fraction of a second and the right calculation. Armstrong's legendary composure, cool, logical, and deeply introspective, allowed him to survive incidents that would have claimed less prepared pilots. These years at Edwards were also a crucible for personal sacrifice. Long hours, constant danger, and the ever-present specter of loss weighed heavily on families. Janet Armstrong, now his wife, maintained a fragile stability at home, parenting their young son Rick, and later their daughter Karen, who tragically died young. The test pilot lifestyle forced life into sharp relief. Armstrong kept his sorrows and vulnerabilities private, teaching himself to grieve in silence and persevere for the sake of his family, for the memory of lost friends, for the pursuit of knowledge itself. Despite setbacks and tragedies, Neil's passion for flight and discovery never wavered. Every launch reinforced his conviction that flight, at its boldest, was not just a career, but an articulation of humanity's deepest longing to breach barriers, to see farther, to become more. It was at Edwards that NASA came calling. Space, the newest and most perilous frontier, was opening to those brave enough to risk not only their lives, but their legacies. Armstrong, with his peerless blend of technical mastery, stoic temperament, and quiet leadership, was exactly who NASA needed. The world was changing, history was accelerating, and Armstrong stood poised at the threshold, ready to hurl himself and all of us into the unknown. Chapter 4. Liftoff, the astronaut selection. The year was 1962, and the United States was locked in a Cold War arms race where the sky was not the limit, but the battlefield. The Soviet Union had already sent Yuri Gagarin into orbit, and the American response needed to be not just equal, but greater. NASA's search for its next generation of astronauts, the legendary New 9, was relentless. Armstrong knew the odds. Test pilots from across the nation, each with remarkable resumes and faster reflexes, were vying for a handful of spots. Neil hesitated. Unlike some contemporaries, he did not seek fame or the spotlight. Yet, amid the technological ferment and the pressure of international rivalry, his inner compass pointed toward participation. He needed to be part of something beyond himself, to transform countless sacrifices into meaningful achievement. The selection process itself was grueling. Physical exams, psychological testing, simulations calculated to induce panic or reveal fatal flaws. Neil's calm, almost detached demeanor, his ability to compartmentalize fear and stress, proved invaluable. Colleagues joked he had ice water in his veins, but those close to him knew it was deeper than mere bravado. It was the result of a lifetime spent mastering chaos, focusing on solutions rather than succumbing to anxiety. NASA recognized in Armstrong a rare amalgam: pilot, engineer, leader, willing to question the status quo without undermining morale. He was chosen to become an astronaut, joining a team whose members would become lifelong brothers. This new fraternity, Borman, Lovell, Conrad, and others, trained with intensity bordering on obsession. Days blurred into nights in the simulators, where entire careers could unravel over mere seconds of miscalculation. Yet astronaut training was not solely technical. NASA's Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs demanded emotional intelligence, the ability to trust, to collaborate, to manage, not just machinery, but the unpredictable variable of human will. Armstrong excelled here too, his quietude grounding others. His instructors saw a man who considered every angle, balanced optimism with rigorous realism, and gained the loyalty of even the most skeptical teammates. The path to spaceflight was paved with setbacks. Rockets exploded, friendships buckled. Under the weight of competition, public scrutiny intensified. Through it all, Neil remained steadfast, a rock for his crew, an anchor for his family. Janet shouldered increasing burdens at home, raising their children amid growing uncertainty and the fear of widowhood. When Neil finally received his first assignment, Gemini 8, the dream became reality. The weight of the world, the pressure of history, all converged. Armstrong did not flinch. He prepared with methodical care and inward resolve, knowing that every small step on Earth would someday lead him and humanity to the moon. Chapter 5. Gemini's Dawn. Preparing for the moon, Gemini 8, was a mission marked by both triumph and terror, a crucible in which Armstrong's legend would be forged. The operation was simple in theory: dock 2 spacecraft in orbit, a maneuver that had never before been attempted. Success would pave the way for future lunar landings. Failure would mean disaster, not just for the crew, but for the American space program's momentum. Training was relentless. Simulations drilled adversity into muscle memory. Neil and his crewmate, David Scott, spent weeks perfecting docking, maneuvers, rehearsing emergency protocols, and bonding as partners in survival. Armstrong's attention to detail was all-consuming, his nights filled with calculations and quiet introspection. The launch itself, on March 16, 1966, was flawless. The rocket's ascent was thunderous, yet controlled. The atmosphere in mission, control electric with possibility. Once in orbit, Armstrong executed a perfect rendezvous and docking with their target vehicle. For a brief, shining instant, humanity edged closer to the moon. Then, calamity struck. Without warning, the docked spacecraft began to roll. Slowly at first, then with terrifying acceleration. Something was wrong. A thruster had malfunctioned, spinning them wildly, threatening to render both men unconscious from G-forces. Every second counted. Armstrong's response was swift and surgical. Calm amidst chaos, he separated from the target vehicle, disabled the faulty thruster, and regained control using the re-entry system, effectively aborting the mission, but saving both their lives. It was the sort of decision only a mind forged by crisis could make, one that earned him the reputation as one of NASA's most reliable hands. Later, NASA officials would agree. Without Armstrong's composure and quick thinking, the mission would have ended in tragedy. The ordeal came at a cost. Public scrutiny intensified, congressional hearings followed, and for a time, Armstrong bore the weight of second-guessing from both within and outside NASA. He never sought vindication. His only concern was the next challenge. The test pilot, in him, understood that every mistake and recovery was valuable data, every scrape a lesson for the journey to come. Meanwhile, the Gemini program advanced. Armstrong continued to train, pushing himself and his teammates to new heights. He flew dangerous simulators, endured punishing G-forces, and tackled every new problem with unyielding curiosity. At home, Janet watched with a mixture of pride and fear. She knew better than anyone the price of ambition, the lonely hours, the risk that each goodbye might be the last. For Armstrong, Gemini was more than preparation. It was a transformative crucible, a place where heroism and heartbreak danced together. Every hour in orbit, every emergency handled with grace, became a rehearsal for a fate that now loomed closer. The promise of walking on the lunar surface, carrying the hopes and history of all humankind. Chapter 6. Apollo's Ascent, Trials and Hopers. The Apollo program rose from the Gemini legacy. The stakes escalated beyond imagination. The triumphs of orbit no longer sufficed. Now the goal was the lunar surface, a feat so audacious it bordered on myth. The whole world was watching. But before Apollo could even hope to land a man on the moon, tragedy intervened. Apollo 1, engulfed by fire during tests, claimed the lives of Grissom, White, and Chaffee. The reverberations of loss shuddered through NASA. Suddenly, the cost of exploration was measured in funerals and shattered hearts, and Armstrong was forced to confront his own mortality and the possibility that his desire to reach the moon might demand the ultimate sacrifice. NASA's response was not retreat, but renewal. Every facet of Apollo underwent rigorous scrutiny. Armstrong played a key role in these reviews, demanding nothing less than perfection from himself and his colleagues. His combination of technical mastery and human empathy helped knit fractured teams back together, inspiring confidence in the mission's battered but unbroken spirit. The selection of the Apollo 11 crew became a moment of both anticipation and anxiety. Armstrong, by now a living legend among his peers, was chosen to command, a choice rooted in merit and tempered by history's burden. Alongside him, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins assumed their fates, each man stepping into a role that would define them forever. Training for Apollo 11 was more than technical, it was existential. The trio rehearsed every maneuver on land and underwater, practiced with lunar module mock-ups, and prepared for every conceivable disaster. They endured spinning centrifuges, endless simulations, and the emotional toll of prolonged absence from their loved ones. Armstrong's stoicism stabilized his crewmates. Once, Buzz Aldrin recounted how Neil's peaceful silence calmed the storm of anxiety that raged before each mission segment. Meanwhile, public anticipation reached a fever pitch. The world's eyes magnified every flaw and speculation. Critics questioned the expense. Pundits doubted the viability. Armstrong, however, retreated neither into grandiosity nor despair. Instead, he focused on the mission, channeling every pressure into meticulous preparation. The moments leading to Apollo 11's launch felt both monumental and intimate. Janet Armstrong, voice trembling with hope and dread, embraced Neil with the unspoken knowledge of history in the making. Armstrong's own heart, usually so steady, quickened in those final nights, haunted by the echo of lost friends, buoyed by the promise of discovery. Everything was ready. The Saturn V stood poised, a titan forged of hope, sweat, and sacrifice. The world held its breath as Armstrong and his crew stepped into the capsule. The line between Earth and Moon had never seemed thinner, nor the future so breathtakingly close. Chapter 7. Moonwalk, the First Footsteps. On July 16, 1969, the whole world seemed to stop. Children gazed at TV screens, scientists sweated behind consoles, and the Armstrong family waited breathlessly as the colossal Saturn V erupted from Cape Kennedy's launch pad. Armstrong and his crewmates, Aldrin and Collins, hurtled beyond the sky, suspended between hope and terror. Every hour was a leap into the unknown. The journey required perfect harmony. Apollo 11 spacecraft, the Command Module Columbia and Lunar Module Eagle, danced around each other in intricate orbital ballets. Armstrong's voice, calm and controlled, reassured not just mission control, but a nervous Earth. Yet beneath the slow pulse of radio static, the tension was nearly unbearable. Approaching the moon's surface, Armstrong faced his greatest test. The Eagle's guidance computer faltered, alarms blared, and fuel dwindled perilously. Mission Control's voices crackled with urgency. For a wrenching, infinite minute, the landing was in doubt. Armstrong, serene as ever, manually guided the Eagle past boulder-strewn craters, trusting calculation and instinct. The moment the lunar module touched down, Armstrong's words became legend. "Houston, Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed." Around the world, 1 billion hearts surged in silent, awe-stricken unity. Preparations for the moonwalk unfolded with quiet ceremony. Armstrong's suit, layered for survival, felt both armor and burden. The descent down the ladder was an act of faith, each rung an affirmation of human courage. As Armstrong stepped onto the moon's surface, dust billowed in slow motion. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," he intoned, the statement echoing through time. For one exquisite moment, the impossible had become real. Armstrong moved with a careful grace, the lunar regolith clinging to his boots. He deployed experiments, raised the stars and stripes, and exchanged words with Aldrin, two Earthlings standing in silent communion with the cosmos. Armstrong's thoughts drifted to his family, to Wapakoneta, to the millions whose dreams he now carried in the hush between stars. Yet even as history sang, Armstrong's humility shone. He spoke not of conquest, but of stewardship. Chapter 8. Legacy Among the Stars. The world had watched breathlessly as Neil Armstrong took a giant leap for mankind. But the story of the man who first set foot on the moon did not conclude on the Sea of Tranquility. In many ways, Neil's greatest contributions began once he returned to Earth, carrying with him both the weight and wonder of having realized humanity's oldest dream: the return. The journey home from the moon had its own peril, requiring constant vigilance and nerves of steel. Inside the command module, Neil, Buzz, and Michael Collins re-entered Earth's atmosphere as heroes transformed by the void of space. Recovery ships greeted them with cheers, but they first faced quarantine. NASA was taking no chances with lunar microbes. For 3 weeks they peered through glass, their families waving from another world, reminding them again how precious the Earth seemed after gazing back at its blue brilliance from the lunar surface. A reluctant hero. The ticker tape. Parades and worldwide tours that awaited could have overwhelmed anyone. Countries clamored to shake hands with the man who had walked on the moon. Yet Neil remained the same quiet, thoughtful figure he had always been. Uncomfortable with fame, shunning the spotlight where he could. When asked to describe the view from the moon, he would often deflect attention, speaking instead of the team effort that made the achievement possible. To Neil, Apollo 11 was not a story of a single man, but the culmination of thousands of engineers, mathematicians, pilots, and dreamers. He became a symbol, not only of achievement but of humility, reminding the world that even the greatest leaps began with small, careful steps. Teaching and inspiration. Neil Armstrong retired from NASA and the Navy in 1971, redirecting his energy into teaching. As a professor of aerospace engineering at the University of Cincinnati, he found joy in inspiring new generations of explorers. His lectures often carried more weight than textbooks could provide. After all, his tales were not theoretical, they were lived. He served on commissions investigating aerospace tragedies, including the Challenger disaster, always with a focus on meticulous safety and constant improvement. His calm authority lent reassurance in turbulent times as the nation reckoned with the risks and rewards of exploration. A lasting legacy as years passed, Armstrong's legend only grew, though he remained ever humble. Statues were erected in his honor. Schools, airports, and museums bore his name. Yet for Neil, the moon landing's truest value lay in its inspiration. It proved that when humanity dares to dream collectively, the impossible can become possible. Neil never lost his sense of awe for the night sky. Even in retirement, he would glance upward, reflecting on the journey that had started in the cornfields of Ohio and ended among the stars. He championed continued space exploration, encouraging new missions and new generations to look up and wonder, what's next? Footsteps that endure. Neil Armstrong passed away on August 25, 2012, but the echo of his footprints on the moon endures. Every new space mission, every young person staring skyward and dreaming carries a part of his legacy. The story of Neil Armstrong is not just that of one man's journey, but of an entire species lifting itself from the dust of one world to touch another. His life reminds us the stars are within our reach, not just because of a single step, but because of the shared vision, courage, and curiosity that define us all. As long as there are eyes to see the moon and minds to wonder about the worlds beyond, the odyssey of Neil Armstrong will continue to inspire. He was a legacy not just among the stars, but within the hearts of all who dared to dream. If you found this video helpful, inspiring, or entertaining, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. Your support means the world. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.